And sharing my screen. Oh, Word cannot open the existing title. That's not good. Oh yeah, there it is. You guys have that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, hold on one second. I'm gonna pull it up in a different view. Every time there's any weather, my system acts funky. All right, there we go. Okay, so this, ladies and gentlemen, is the final subsection of the new PoCD. I got about really 2.5 pages. That table at the end is just something I plunked in there as sort of a discussion prompt. So we will proceed as we have proceeded with other discussion groups, which is I will read it aloud. You can stop me as we go to make comments, and then we will open it up for a fuller discussion. So all I really got to was section 17.1, subdivision regulations revision under section 17, future land use. All right. And away we go. The 2020 rewrite of the Thompson zoning regulations has been extensively cited as a vital, there's a lot of typos here, as a vital first step in encouraging development that is most appropriate for Thompson's future. Revision of the subdivision regulations must now follow as a logical next step. Updating the subdivision regulations will eliminate any contradictions or inconsistencies between the two documents, and it will also allow for a better articulated set of standards to drive residential development and density according to the priorities identified in both the zoning regulations and this plan of conservation and development. In summary of points made elsewhere in this document regarding patterns of development relevant to subdivisions, Thompson's road maintenance budget is severely underfunded. Therefore, the acceptance of new public streets should be disincentivized. New public streets should only be permitted where a compelling transportation interest for the town can be demonstrated by the developer, as in section 4.2. New cul-de-sacs provide no utilities to the town and should be disallowed as public streets. Where cul-de-sacs are proposed, they should be treated as shared private driveways or private streets maintained by the residents who share them, also in section 4.2.
Sarah, can I interrupt you, which I already did, but do you
Yes, of course, John.
do you want to have you read all of this and then we can discuss every bullet point, or you want to discuss the bullet points as we go?
Either way is fine. In sections where I've had more content coming into the discussion, it's made more sense to go like subsection by subsection. Here, it's just one subsection, so it doesn't really matter. If you have points to make throughout, that's fine. We'll stop and take them as we go. I assume that means you have something to say.
You assume correctly, as usual. Well, I don't know, whoever's on board here, if that's the way they want to do it, it's okay. I can wait, but I just wanted to address, you know, all of these bullets, but it's up to them.
I think because it's a short, she should probably just read it first.
Okay.
And then go through it. If it was longer, I would say yes, but it's only like 2.5 pages.
All right.
Yeah, okay, either way.
What do you?
All right.
Oh.
Yeah, and it works fine either way, but yeah, I can certainly go through. So picking up where we were, where cul-de-sacs are proposed, they should be treated as shared private driveways or private streets maintained by the residents who share them. Average density for Thompson must increase in order to better amortize the cost of public services, also found in section 4.2. 2020 average density is 19 parcels per road mile as compared with an allowable density of 70 parcels per road mile in areas with private water and sewer and 211 parcels per road mile in areas with public utility connections, as detailed in section 7.3. 34% of renters and 21% of homeowners are cost burdened for their housing needs, as shown in section 7.1. Existing housing inventory in Thompson is a poor fit for homeowners at the two ends of the age spectrum, first-time home buyers and seniors. Thompson has high concentration of single-family homes with 3 or more bedrooms as well as a large percentage of homes built prior to 1970, as demonstrated in section 7.1. Thompson is below the recommended threshold for designated affordable housing units and is therefore at a disadvantage in the affordable housing land use appeal procedure, found in section 7.2. There is a high correlation between walkable neighborhoods and increased property values and neighborhood desirability, as discussed in section 9.4. And Thompson residents place high value on the rural nature and historic character of the town. That's kind of throughout, so I didn't cite that specifically. The through line between these points shows a preference for driving development toward those areas best able to absorb density due to their access to public utilities and potential for the creation of desirable walkable neighborhoods. With the recent revision of the zoning regulations permitting individual lots of 4,500 square feet in the downtown Mill Rehabilitation District, Common Residential District, and parts of the Thompson Corridor Development District, the opportunity now exists to encourage precisely that pattern. Where subdivisions are to be proposed in districts without existing infrastructure to support economically sound levels of density, the standards under which such plans are developed must be adhered to closely to ensure that Thompson does not fall victim to creeping suburban sprawl in its green spaces. Topics that will require immediate attention include regulations regarding construction of new roads, shared driveways and cul-de-sacs, requirements for the inclusion of sidewalks, and standards for open space subdivisions, also known as conservation subdivisions. 3 vacant privately owned parcels in the downtown Mill Rehabilitation District have periodically come before the PZC with applications for subdivision. 0 Riverside Drive, 20.77 acres. Here's the map, block and lot. 0 Rawson Avenue and 0 Buckley Hill Road, 4.04 acres and 0.83 acres respectively. At this time, all prior subdivision plans have expired and the parcels remain undeveloped. These are, however, properties well suited to support new subdivision for residential or mixed-use development. Even in the case of the smallest of the 3, 0.83 acres, the potential exists to create up to 8 lots. Footnote, estimated number of lots is based on a simple calculation of square footage and does not take into account any other factors such as frontages, setbacks, etc. It is intended to represent, it is intended to, where did it go? It moved. There we go. It is intended to represent a best case scenario only to illustrate the new potential for development of small parcels. Constructing duplexes on each of those resulting lots, which may be done on a simple zoning permit, would further increase needed missing middle housing stock in a neighborhood where such construction is most appropriate. A seemingly simple provision for the allowance of shared driveways in proposed new developments has the potential to ease the path toward more sustainable subdivision regulations. From a conservation point of view, shared driveways reduce curb cuts and total impermeable surface, and they allow for more tightly clustered lots, therefore infringing less on remaining green spaces. Within the framework of municipal budgets and manpower, permitting privately maintained access ways relieves the potential maintenance burden of new roads. Shared driveways also make the development of smaller lots more feasible, allowing developers to maximize their return on compact parcels in the higher density districts. The rewritten zoning regulations do express a preference for shared driveways. However, they remain prohibited in the current subdivision regulations. Correcting this contradiction should be undertaken immediately by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Furthermore, the revisions must clarify that cul-de-sacs will no longer be eligible for acceptance as public roads and must always be treated as private driveways. There are challenges to homeowners in developments with shared driveways. HOAs must be formed in order to fund and maintain them. Fees and responsibilities of association members must be made clear at time of sale, and some borrowers may experience friction from mortgage lenders when shared driveways are in play. These challenges, however, do not outweigh the benefits the town derives by allowing them. One challenge which must be addressed in the revision of the subdivision regulations is the standard to which such shared driveways must be built. The town will protect its own interests as well as the interests of new homeowners by articulating those standards clearly to ensure that developments will not receive final approval unless construction methods used for the shared driveways are sufficient for their anticipated traffic burden. The current edition of the subdivision regulations does include a requirement for the inclusion of sidewalks in the subdivision development plan. However, waivers are also permitted and the practice has regularly been to grant waivers where they have been requested. The unintended result has been to leave most Thompson neighborhoods difficult or dangerous for pedestrians to use with any regularity. Given the strong correlation of sidewalks to economic vitality, and that it is often prohibitively inconvenient and costly to the town to retrofit a neighborhood with sidewalks, it is recommended that the PZC narrow the conditions under which a waiver may be granted. That is as far as I got, so let's go back and look at this, and then we'll move forward. I know you're just waiting, John. You're waiting to say whatever it is you want to say.
No, I'm waiting for somebody else to say something. I don't want to be the only one. But
I don't think you'll be the only one, but if you have something, just toss it out there.
John,
Okay.
if your comments are on what she read, I think it's appropriate for you to comment on it.
Well, I plan on it, Cindy.
Okay.
I like the first paragraph, which you state as part of the, I think that would be what would be in the plan of conservation, because it pretty much identifies everything that you listed in your summary. I'm not sure if I feel comfortable having all these items, all these bullets in the plan of conservation, although I didn't read, I don't have that section 4.2 looking at that first budget. But to address the first budget, the road maintenance budget being underfunded, I think that would be something for a goal of the town to do, not necessarily us to say, okay, new public streets should be permitted where compelling transportation interest, that type of thing.
Well, that is a section that did receive quite a bit of back and forth and commentary. And the math on it is solid. The road maintenance budget is underfunded to an order of some magnitude. And I mean, I could, if I had the full document here, which I don't, since I have it at my file at work. Well, I have the paper copy, but an appropriate budget for this town, for the number of roads that we have, would be $1.625 million a year. The town funded it for $325,000 last year. So to say that it is severely underfunded is just a statement of actual fact.
Yeah, but
so the reason that we cite it here in the subdivision regulations is because people propose roads, but they propose roads that then get turned over to the town, added to the town's road inventory, and they do not come with the amount of funding necessary to maintain them. So the compromise position is, yes, you may propose a subdivision, but unless you're proposing a road that the town actually wants and needs for a real reason, if it's connecting areas that need to be connected, then make it a shared driveway. Make it the responsibility of a group of homeowners in association. That allows the construction to go forward, and it prevents burden from coming to the town. And that is a fairly logical statement.
But don't we already have that in our regulations? That scenario, if we don't accept it, or there's the opportunity for a developer to have HOAs. The problem with that, as I see, is I know you carry on below that, I recall reading, is that not all, when they sign up or buy a house on a development, okay, that the seller is telling them that, oh, by the way, we have an HOA and it's going to cost you X amount of dollars per month to do that. What happens down the road, they don't contribute to that HOA. And what's the recourse for that HOA? Kick the people out? I'm not sure if they can do that.
Well, it is the same as a condo association or any other HOA. And HOAs are, of course, more common in regions outside New England. They're actually de rigueur in a lot of regions. Now, let me be clear. I hate HOAs. I was the manager of an HOA. I would rather kill myself than belong to one again. But the terms that you accept when you buy a home are a part of your contract, and that's a buyer beware. I mean, we do refer to the fact that, yes, there are challenges where the town has some leeway is before those homes are constructed, you know, or before those homes are signed off on, the development is signed off on for occupancy,
Right.
say that, you know, it's a standard, just like we have a standard for a regular driveway. The physical standards for shared driveways, shared access ways, which are beneficial for the town to permit, must be clear, because that protects both the town and the homeowners.
Yeah,
The
but-
terms of the HOA and how the HOA sets its fees is a private matter.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if, you know, we're telling them the acceptance of a new public street should be de-incentivized, should only be permitted when a compelling transportation interest is. You know, that should only, that should, you know, it gets back to the term of may and what's the other term that we use?
It's
Shall.
may and shall, but that's
and-
not relevant to this document, because this is not a regulatory document, it's a guidance document.
Yeah,
In other words, when we go back and work on the subdivision regulations,
mm,
the shall versus may standard will apply.
yeah,
This is a philosophical document so that people can have an idea of what the priorities are. The standard for shall versus may is outside.
Oh,
these parameters.
you know, I like that in a sense that, like to see that, but I don't know how we're gonna have it, you know, have it happen, not have it happen, but like you say, it's only, it's not gonna be mandated, it's gonna be, you know, a guideline, so to speak, as this whole document is, just as a guidance.
In this document, it's going to be a guideline. What gets articulated in the subdivision regulations
Yeah.
is the
right.
next project for the Planning and Zoning Commission. So at that point, the level that the commission determines is appropriate, you know, the level of scrutiny, what the threshold is, that's in a later set of debates with the whole commission, or as many members of the commission as want to work on the project.
Okay, just the devil again, is that, say we do accept this one bullet anyway, is that that's in a plan of conservation. Now we're gonna go into the subdivision regs. Now, if we decide as the commission, no, we don't like that, now wouldn't that be a conflict of the PoCD and our regulations? How does
In a perfectly literal sense, you are correct, John. But again, since this is not a regulatory document, it's a guidance document, I think you probably could scour the state of Connecticut to find a single town that had a 100% compliance with its own PoCD. These are goals. We're going to meet a certain number of them, and we're not going to meet a certain number of them, just like the last one. So this is your benchmark to start with.
truthfully, between you and I don't recall any of the decisions that we had at P and Z meetings that we referred, well, it's in the PoCD, is that we should, you know, it's a recommendation, I don't ask, well, Joe's only been on a couple of years, but anybody else that, you know, that we always look for, not to say we shouldn't, I think we should be looking at that. Why make a PoCD if we're not gonna look at it before we act on issues before?
Well, I think everybody would agree with you on that, John. You know, my impression, and obviously I wasn't here either, but my continued impression from reading the past one was that it was one guy who wrote it, had some input perhaps from members of the commission or other, some other advisory members. But I mean, it's obviously a much thinner document, and it was less well fleshed out. So, probably 30 people have put their eyes and hands on this and provided input. So the level of investment is high. How much the various commissions and committees and boards use and refer to this, that remains to be seen. But if there's a lot of involvement, that implies that those things will be more front of mind.
Yeah, to that point is to, I know it's down there further about making more or less waivers and things of that nature. It'd be more stringent, but that's up to the ZBA. And if you look at technically what they're supposed to be looking at when they waive something, boy, in my view, they don't even look at it because it's supposed to be relative to cost mostly, Well, that's
well, in the context of what's in here,
Yeah.
yes, you and the members of the PCC and I don't have any influence on ZBA. They're a separate body. But in context of this statement, it's right in the subdivision regulations that conditions may be waived by PZC. That's PZC, not ZBA. So, and there's a long list of them. And as I know Joe will remember, one of the first things I ever said when I was a member of the PZC, when a subdivision application came up and we voted to waive the sidewalks, was afterwards I said, why did we waive those sidewalks? Just because they asked, essentially. And we said, yeah, oh, sure, okay. So.
Because it's gonna go to ZBA and they're gonna waive that requirement. That's why. I agree is that, even the last one, we just recently have one, Aida and Quinnebog. Why did we waive that sidewalk? All that sidewalk out in Quinnebog, that big development, because the town director, superintendent there, said that it's gonna cost the town to maintain those sidewalks. He has to buy new equipment. So I think we're gonna hear the same thing when we start mandating all these sidewalks in these outlying.
Are you talking about Donovan Drive?
Yes, ma'am.
We didn't waive the sidewalks. We waived a small portion of the sidewalk.
That's right. It's still the same thing. You still
No, you approved a small portion. You waived a large portion.
Yeah. From the road of 131. No,
Up to where it begins.
197. I guess
Yeah.
it's pretty much the town-owned property because the homeowner doesn't have frontage on that. And the question came up, well, how about the backside of that homeowner's property? Who's gonna clean that? If he cleans the front side, does he clean the backside? But that's off the track. Let's continue. Tara, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Well, what else do you, go ahead, Cindy.
Well, my comment on the sidewalks, you're saying that you need more sidewalks and you're pushing for that, but then you don't want any more roads. To me, that contradicts development. That's just my opinion. I mean, I understand.
So as it turns out, roads do not drive economic development, but sidewalks do. Roads are always a loser, and sidewalks generally show return on investment for the town. And there's all kinds of places I could point you for that.
Well, with the meeting that we had the other day, and this is a little sidetracking, but what they were told, they want to scrap the whole idea, because if you're not going to accept a road, what's the point of having a subdivision? So I think you're going to come up against that continually. And
they didn't say they were going to scrap. I know what you're talking about. They didn't say they were going to scrap that. They just needed to go back and look at their possibilities.
No.
Well, one of the issues that we did come up, which does come up here, is that there are contradictions right now in the existing subdivision regulations with the regulations that we just put in place that are going to have to be resolved in the short term in order to make subdivision developers have a clear set of standards. You know, and there may be occasions when a subdivision is proposed that has genuine value for connectivity of transportation systems, roads, pedestrian, cyclist, whatever. But that's really got to be demonstrated because the cost that they take to maintain per road mile, since I can't pull it up on the screen, let me find it and I'll just, for those who are not part of that conversation, bear with me, guys. Hold on 1 second.
But Tara, don't we in our current subregs is that it requires sidewalks on subdivisions?
I've got it pulled up if you'd like me to share it.
Yeah, let me enable screen share for you then, Joe. Hold on. Share screen. Okay, you got it.
Great. Road and construction maintenance, right? This is what you're.
Yep.
Well, I can't read that fast, Joe, when you move.
Well, this is.
So just to recap for those who weren't a part of this, and this is pretty well developed now. These early sections have gone through a lot of review. Asphalt roads typically have a functional lifespan of roughly 15 years before they are assumed to require significant repairs, resurfacing. With 95.97 miles of improved roads in Thompson, budgeting for 1.5 miles of road resurfacing per fiscal year clearly is insufficient to properly maintain the roads in an acceptable and safe condition. And just to backtrack, that's what $325,000 functionally pays for, 1.57 miles of road. Assuming that the schedule of repairs should be staggered to resurface all public roads on a 15-year cycle, the town should be allowing for the resurfacing of roughly 6.5 road miles per year. They did hit that in once or twice in recent years, but that's not what they budgeted for in this fiscal year. Further, assuming that the average cost per road mile remains stable at $250,000, an appropriate annual resurfacing budget would therefore be $1,625,000 per year. So, you know, based on this argument and the other logical arguments presented in the section on public works and infrastructure, you know, the financial burden of roads to the town is totally out of whack with what we are able to take in tax revenues. So you have a couple of partial solutions that add up to an improvement, if not a total solution. One is disincentivizing new roads, not taking on new infrastructure maintenance costs. The other is increasing density to an optimal level to amortize those costs better over the community. I think further down in that section, it says, like, you know, if you were to sort of do simple calculations on it, roughly the way at the density we have now, it works out to roughly 8.8% of an individual taxpayer's property taxes would be put towards road maintenance. Whereas if you increase allowable density to 104 parcels per road mile, and that's just the average for the town, doesn't have to be every neighborhood, that amortizes down to something like 5.5%. There you go, 8.3%.
Wow.
So the difference is significant, you know, and if you take it over 10 years, you know, what you're putting back in the pockets of your taxpayers by allowing increased density and disallowing additional maintenance burden is the only truly supportable way to go. Now, you can debate over, you know, the levels of density, that kind of thing. That's open for debate, but some allowable increase must be there. Now, the good news is you guys already did that to a certain extent when you accepted the new zoning regulations. You accepted an increase in allowable density in the areas with public water and sewer of up to 211 parcels per road mile. That's parcels, that's not even households, right? Because if you have a multi, it's still just one parcel. And it's up to, I think, 70 homes per road mile in the private water and sewer district. That's actually more or less the same as it is now because you kept the 150-foot frontage. So you've maintained stable allowable density in the outlying districts, but you've radically increased the allowable density in the areas most able to sustain it. So again, you've done part of the work already, but more work can still be done to make these things consistent across the board.
Sarah, that number that you quoted there for road maintenance, does that include the monies that we receive from the state for road maintenance?
It does not, which is why you're able to sort of get away with some here and there, but you have less control over, of course, what the state gives you or discretionary grants. Some of those costs are fixed on a certain percentage, but that fluctuates from year to year.
Yeah, but wasn't that somewhere around 400,000, if I recall, at the finance meetings that the state kicks in for road maintenance? That's why Rich was able to do a lot more with monies, not necessarily from the town, because he wouldn't be able to pave a driveway with the money he gets for the town. It's pretty much the money.
Yes, there is no doubt. There's no doubt that state funding supplements that amount of money. But even if you add those two figures together that we just say, let's say it's $400,000, now you're talking about $725,000.
Yeah.
The annual road maintenance burden should still be 1.625 million. You're still at a deficit.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree. But isn't that rich? I know we can help by having zoning regs meet these road conditions and new developments, but the battle to get more money is Rich's in front of budget time to go before the Board of Finance.
So I guess I don't understand the point you're trying to make, John, is that you do or do not agree with the premise that's being advanced here based on the logic?
I'm not sure. I have to read the other part. Is that almost discouraging new roads in town unless they're private roads and HOVs? And I'm not sure.
So what we really want to encourage, John, what you really want to encourage is density where it belongs, right? So you've already made things looser in terms of what is allowed in the districts that are served by public water and sewer. They have the infrastructure and physical capacity to take more density. So that accomplishes, of course, the increase of density goals. And what it does is it shows developers looking at this stuff that the path to building subdivisions is easier. There is less friction in areas where that development is already more appropriate. You can still propose a subdivision out in some large parcel somewhere out in the middle of nowhere neighborhood in Thompson. You have every legal right to do it. You'll set the standard by which it should do, but we're not encouraging that because that is what is sprawl. When people talk about sprawl, they're talking about the loss of open space. They're talking about, the degradation of wildlife corridors. Those things happen when you build in outlying districts. They don't happen when you build in core districts. So that's what your tools, your regulatory tools of the regular zoning regulations and the subdivision regulations allow you to do. It's stating your preferences, making it easier in some areas because you've decided that those areas can bear the burden, and still permitting, but placing a higher threshold in the places where that is less appropriate or less favorable for the set of priorities that's been articulated throughout the document. Some of those priorities include maintaining rural character, maintaining historic building, increasing or preserving conservation areas, you know, and you can go right down that
Yeah.
list.
I'm not sure, how do you preserve the rural characters when you're trying to put more people in a square mile or square, you know, that type of thing? I think you kind of lose that.
Because you drive that to your areas that are already semi-urbanized. They have public infrastructure. They
Yeah,
have
oh, I agree
more-
with you. You know, you identified 3 areas primarily, you know, the Mill District and everything that has sewer and water. I agree with that. but,
Correct.
I'm not sure how we translate that to the outer areas, say East Thompson or Quinnebog and those areas. But okay, we can move on without, we'll be here all night on that, I guess. I was just concerned with the roads. I'm not sure how that's gonna work. We'll have to look at that some
Well,
more.
we're going to have months to work that out with,
Yeah,
right, in the commission?
Well, we got 10 years actually, you know, right?
Well, 10 years for the next POCD, but
Right.
presumably somebody's going to come before that with a subdivision application is going to need to be approved. Okay, what does anybody else have on this section before we start moving to some of the stuff that isn't drafted yet?
That bullet-
Caroline,
Can you
can
bring
I-
up the bullets again, Tara?
Carolyn, were you trying to say something?
yeah, I just wanted to comment a little bit about the sidewalks. But John needs to
Thank you.
go over something first.
No, I just want to get back and prepare.
Oh, okay.
No, thank you.
So the idea of the waivers for sidewalks. I understand why we would want sidewalks in the areas where we're encouraging more development. The corridor and the mill district and so forth. But in terms of the rural ag district, I think that it should remain that waivers can be granted for those types of subdivisions, because it doesn't make sense to me to require sidewalks where people want to live in a rural area and walk on the dirt, on the grass, on the, you know, whatever is growing there, you know, whatever vegetation is growing, rather than on cement. I don't think that we should require sidewalks in the rural district.
Well, I see your point, Carolyn. I guess my response to it would be this. What you end up having is in fact a place where people can't walk at all. So if you look at a lot of the roads up in East Thompson that we got a lot of complaints about during the brouhaha over all that gravel mining,
Yep.
people take roads at whatever speeds they want, and without the sort of safe passage area for local pedestrians of something like a sidewalk, then what you've really done is you've privileged car traffic. That's all you've done, is you've privileged car traffic, and you've unprivileged the people who live there to be able to just walk to a neighbor's house. Doesn't mean people can't, don't, won't, but in fact you have set the priority to favor car travel. I would generally agree that where small subdivisions are proposed, and we've seen a couple of those come up, 3 lots, 4 lots, that connect to nothing, you probably have a strong argument to say, you know, why bother? But in a place, and we'll go back to Donovan Drive, that's, I think, what is it, 18 houses, might even be more. Now you're talking
Yes.
about a neighborhood.
Yes.
And now it's a neighborhood where it's a kid can walk to another kid's house down the street without having to walk in the road. It's a neighborhood where kids can go trick-or-treating at Halloween and feel safe that they're not walking on the roads in the dark.
Well, that whole area is fairly densely populated already compared to other parts of the rural town. And I could understand that. And in that particular development, there are, I think, 3 parcels that are open space parcels. So, you know, for people, if that's what planning and zoning agreed to, you know,
Isn't this
that's,
something, I don't want to interrupt everybody, you and Tara, but isn't this something that needs to be brought up under the subdivision regulations? And this is just suggestions here, you know,
Yeah,
it's a
realize that.
guideline, but you're
I
getting
realize
deep into that sidewalk issue.
I think essentially my sentiment is that if I'm living in a rural area, I really don't want it to resemble the city. I lived in the city for 20-something years and I couldn't get far enough away from it. So that's my personal take on it. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and like I say, I hear you there, Carolyn. And also, Cindy, you're absolutely right. But the details of this are what are going to be hammered out in the subdivision regulations when those are updated.
Yes, and
But what I would still say here is that there should still be an articulation, a clearer articulation and a narrower articulation of when sidewalks may or should be waived.
I agree.
I think about, sorry to interrupt here. I think about the Brickyard Road subdivision we just approved, I guess just last month, right, in October, that we approved with a sidewalk waiver. And that was, you know, I think that was a waiver that made sense. You know, it was, like you said, a small subdivision, not much to connect to. And we could still continue to do that. But I do agree that we want to be, that we should be more intentional about how those waivers are granted. And I would be happy to see the PoCD make some suggestions as we're crafting the subdivision regulations as to when those might be. Does that make
That's
sense?
a good suggestion. Yes, it does, because that's what we're all dancing around is, yeah, we all agree that there should be some ability to waive, but what is that ability and what are the guidelines?
Isn't that something that I read that is the possibility of waiving sidewalks still?
Mhm.
Did I read that somewhere in there?
Yes.
So the option is
Yeah.
there.
Yes, it is in there, John.
It's strictly up to the commission to waive it. My put with that is that Joe just mentioned that one out in Quinnebog there, you know, Capitulic's old property, is that I think at least I should, if you're gonna exempt that, is that to look at the surrounding, what's the potential down the road of a larger development being in that area? Is that, so maybe we wanna require them to put sidewalks in with the potential later down the road that there be more houses being built. And so how do you go back to have that person that got the waiver to put in sidewalks? Who would have to do that? The town to complete that? You know what I'm saying? Is that we got a small subdivision, which is only 3 lots there. And it makes sense out there because there's nothing else out there. There used to be a large farm, but the potential down the road is that maybe there is a more houses in there that might make sense. I like sidewalks in a sense that it gets the kids off the side of the road, that they can stand there waiting for the bus. So that's why I wasn't too enthused about that Cornerbog one, not going all the way to the road, to the highway.
I don't disagree with you there, John. That the compromise was one that was felt to be reasonable for everybody, so everybody got part of what they wanted. But I don't disagree that I certainly would have liked to have seen those sidewalks go all the way out, but the arguments that were presented for waiving that section were compelling enough at the time. But Joe brings up an excellent point, is that each of these has come before the commission and they've been sort of laissez-faire, catch as catch can. We're going to waive this one because because, hey, it doesn't connect to anything. But what you get when you do that is a bunch of things that don't connect to anything. It makes it harder to get that connectivity later. So
think
yeah,
that's
Joe,
right.
I've got a note here to sort of go back and look at the conditions under which waivers can be granted and see if we can suggest some tightened up language there. Anybody got anything else on this opening section? Because after this, we're off the reservation and we're just drafting it live and in person.
You want to go back to page 1, please?
Yes, sir. What do you got?
I don't know. I got to look at my notes.
Well, he's looking at his notes, Tira. I would just say I appreciated the way that it did sort of lay everything out. You know, this is what we said in the document, and this is what we think that means for the subdivision. And I thought that was clear and well articulated.
Yeah, you know, in some ways, this is the crowning jewel chapter, in that each section and each topic does have a set of goals, but the whole document is a plan of conservation and development, which means at the end, you know, this future land use, that is stating your real development goals from a whole cloth perspective, I would say, which is why the topics that are in here, which all happen to be P&Z related, in some ways, I think they're the most important part of the document.
All right, Joe, I found my note. Tara, the elimination of cul-de-sacs. Can you expand on that, or why we wouldn't want?
Yeah, because a cul-de-sac is a private driveway. A cul-de-sac serves nobody but the people who live on it, and yet the town still has to pay to maintain it. A cul-de-sac should be a private driveway.
Okay, so if somebody has a development that's gonna end up, say, just like we're doing for Plum Road there, and they're gonna require them to make a cul-de-sac.
It's already there.
Well,
No.
we're
No.
requiring him to do that under existing regulation or regulations that
Yeah.
were in place when he
Yeah.
made his application.
Yeah, but, well, he hasn't made an application to us, because he hasn't given us the site plan. That's the second part of it. John is the John Linky, that first part with a cul-de-sac where Mr. Benoit built his house, that's what he developed there. But that was the thing, is that if you don't have a cul-de-sac, wouldn't that be the option for the developer? Say if it's just a half a mile in or something like that, and you're only gonna put 4 or 5 houses, he's gonna have to own that road or do a HOA, right? Because we don't want.
That is what has been suggested, yes.
Okay, all right, I understood it, that's the way I interpreted it, just that a developer's
Yeah,
gonna.
so again, you can
road.
construct a cul-de-sac, you just can't hand it off to the town to take care of it for you after you do it.
Yeah.
That's the intention.
And why not though? If all the people that are on that street are paying tax, I'm playing a devil's advocate, as you know, I don't have, any interest in.
No, sure, it's a fair question. And you are correct that all taxpayers in Thompson pay to maintain all roads. In theory, all taxpayers in Thompson therefore should have the benefit and use of those roads. A cul-de-sac benefits nobody except the people who live on it. There is no connectivity. Right? I mean, it is a private driveway that the town happens to maintain.
So that's why I'm paying taxes living on that 6-house road or something like that. So why shouldn't if I'm paying taxes, why shouldn't the town take care of that road?
Well, again, if we go
I'm
back to the
fighting for
logic
the
of
other people,
of
you-
the towns, yeah, no, sure. If we're going back to the law, and again, it's not like we're gonna retro seed existing cul-de-sacs.
Right.
Existing town roads are existing town roads.
Right.
What we're saying is we have identified that these are economic losers for the town, and that you can feel free to go ahead and construct one, but these are the conditions under which you're going to construct
But
one.
the town is not gonna.
And you're going to have to build
Oh,
in,
no.
the
Yeah.
town's not going to maintain it. You're going to have to
Yeah.
build in your own maintenance plan.
Can I just add
that
something to
is-
that?
That's
Yeah, go ahead.
same, that's the same rationale as the people that say, why should I support the school if I don't have any kids?
Well, except that education actually does benefit everybody. If you have an educated workforce, you have
Yeah,
an attractive population to locate development. The same is not true of a cul-de-sac.
Yeah, tell that to the people at the town meeting.
He's making a good devil's advocate.
I am.
He
I'm
always
just-
does.
I just wanted to say that Connecticut does not allow development impact fees. So that's another reason why somehow or other the municipality has to be able to protect itself if it's already struggling to take care of the infrastructure it has.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Okay.
Always a voice of common reason is Carolyn.
Well, I don't know about that, but.
I do. That's why I don't like her.
Right.
All right, anybody have anything else on this section? Before we move on to the
If I-
open-ended items?
Let me backtrack one more. Is that where, I didn't read it quick enough. Is that where you mentioned 3 vacant privately owned parcels? See that?
Right here, and I just used them as exemplars, mostly because I happen to be aware of them, and they are ideally located to use as examples,
Yeah.
right off the main sort of high-density promotion corridor. So this is Frank Jake's property, which is on the market, and these are the 2 Vangel properties, which their subdivision plans have both expired, so they're just plots without plans right now.
Yeah, but that Rawson Avenue 4 point, that was approved and that was, I don't think it was low income, but it's multi-housing in there. Well, it probably wasn't developed because of,
It was approved, but it's expired, I think, John.
yeah, but why it wasn't developed?
Mr. Rice,
Yes,
the parcel you're talking about, it was gonna be built as a 55 and over housing project, for 55 and over, like senior citizens or whatever. But he decided not to go forward with it, I guess, because he felt that it didn't economically fit his footprint. So, and
Yeah.
Mr. Jakes was gonna feed off of that.
yeah,
But
but that was housing handicapped also, John, remember? Because we made
Yes.
concessions about the parking and everything else out
Yeah.
front, because he didn't have the required space.
Right.
I think it was just more economically,
Right.
wrong time of the,
But the one you're talking about, low income, the one he wanted to build as a low or mid-level, or somebody that was only making 30 grand a year or something with low income housing, was gonna be right at the end of Buckley Hill Road, right there at Route 12, where the old Dr. Goyette and Waldron.
that's the one I'm talking about, Zero
Oh, okay.
Ross.
I thought, no, that's.
Oh, no, Zero Rawson was the other one, I'm sorry, you're right.
Right, that was
Yeah.
down 2 distinctions that he had built. One was gonna be the low income over here, Buckley Hill Road, at the lower, right there, Route 12,
Yeah.
Buckley Hill, and the other one on Rawson was gonna be 55 and over. Because I remember when we discussed that all in the meetings, you were right about the having handicap parking and whatnot, because we had that added in and he had no problem with it, but that's what.
Yeah,
Okay,
anyway,
well-
the point of them is just to say, here are 3 vacant parcels, and these could be developed for much higher density than other areas in town, it would be appropriate to cite them here. So this is, again, just giving an example. There's nothing else specific about these properties other than acknowledging that they exist,
Okay,
and that with, and in the case of this latter one, the 0.83, just based on the square footage math, which is inexact, you could get 8 parcels out of that. Now that, again, we're not talking about whether there's setbacks or there's wetlands or any of that that's related to that, just based on the math. So maybe he could get 5, right? Or 4 or 6. The point is that now it can be done in a way that it couldn't be done before. And
okay.
even if you put 6 duplexes on there, you've got much higher concentrated density, which is good for the kind of housing that Thompson is missing. You're missing entry level and you're missing age out level, right? Big house, empty nester, wants to stay in town, has few options. Young, first time homeowner, if it's a condo, or, young professional renter. That's what the town is missing, right? And this is where you want to drive it. And what happens when you build appropriately and you make a desirable community is that the whole thing gets an economic lift. Did you have another point or question about those 3 parcels, John?
No, I was good.
Okay.
I just pointing, I didn't understand that part, putting more people in there in that small area, but it's served by water and sewer, so,
Correct.
it shouldn't be a problem.
Correct. All right. So 17.2, 17.3, 17.4 are all just general topics that I wanted to address here. But because of the time crunch and the holiday and getting some other stuff out, I have drafted nothing. So this is your chance to shine, everybody. What do we want to say about these things? How do we want to tie it into our greater purpose of building economic vitality, of driving density where it belongs? This table that I plopped here was kind of a thought prompt to myself. This is from a website that I look at a lot called Sustainable City Code, which has sort of some of the forward-thinking examples that have been adopted in other communities. Some of them are out of the reach of a place like Thompson based on the scale of the communities that adopted them in the first place, but not all of them are. Let me, you guys go ahead and start talking about this stuff. I am going to, I'm going to pull up that table.
Well, I was just getting my magnifying glass, but it's okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing this for, Mr. Freshy. I don't hear anybody discussing.
Well, I'll start the discussion a little bit with this.
Please.
With those 3 points that you put in there, you take that and you relate those 3 points to how you formed the new regulations and what you expect the development in those districts that apply to those 3 points. Does that make sense?
I was having a little trouble following you, although it's probably because I was typing at the same time. Say it again.
Okay, so you have the 3 points. Let me get the paper. We just did the regulations, right?
Yeah.
And you did it with the intent of bringing in more business, bringing in more development. So
Yep.
you take those 3 points: encouragement of infill development, encourage and adaptive reuse of buildings and brownfields, and you relate it to how we formed our new regulations to deal with those 3 issues.
Okay, I see what you're saying now, Cindy. Yes. All right. Thank you.
So that's the first thing I have to say about, anything further beyond what you wrote. The second thing, I don't know if anybody read the previous POCD, but which I don't think anybody really had a lot of respect for it from what I've been hearing over the years. And then when you got yourself involved in this new one, but they did address 11 issues. Are those issues just gone? We're not going to look at that. We're not going to continue to address them. I don't know if anybody read that section before you came to the meeting tonight. So that's
Well,
my
what do you
second-
have in mind, Cindy? What's your, what are you looking at in particular? Because I think that'll be a more helpful prompt. I actually
All right,
brought a
well-
copy with me here, but
All right, well, you put that up so you can talk about that and we can go back to this.
no, it's okay, because we can just leave this here while we're
Okay,
discussing this other.
So there were things like in the past plan of development, they had a trolley line trail extension. Obviously, I don't see a trolley line, so that wasn't done. There was talk about the Wilsonville hydro site, which they have a new owner in that place now. Are we going to pursue or encourage any plans for that? A commuter rail station study. I don't think you've done that in 10 years. I might be wrong because I've only been here for 3 years. What kind of work has the Army Courts done on their trail extension? The Belding Mill hydro site, I believe that's in the Brownfield project. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Putnam link for the trail extension. I don't know what kind of work has been done on that. I do know on that particular one, when I was CEO in Putnam, and this goes back a while, we met with the planner, not Mary Ann, but the one before that, to talk about the connection between Thompson and Putnam, the trail extension. There was the I-395 land use corridor study. I don't know if anything was done about that. Then they put in there the airline trail extension to be worked on. I believe you guys are doing that now. If I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong. And then the exit 100 land use study, and that was related to the Welcome Center that, we would have to have state approval for. And I know for a while that was talked about. Then there was the 5 Mile Greenway corridor study, which I have no idea what that's about. And then, of course, I think this has been in discussion ever since the one that it was exit 98, but I think it's exit 48 now, redeveloping that, redesigning that, or a redesign study, which I think ever since that was done, they've been talking about redesigning that study, studying that redesigning of it. So those are some things that I read, and I had just wondered, what the activities you guys are doing now with the mill project, the what do you call it? I forget, branding committee. How have you taken those committees, those activities, and related to the suggestions that were in the last plan of conservation and development?
So I think that the branding study actually arose out of, to a certain extent, in a roundabout way, the last POCD. I think that was one of the things that, although not specifically articulated by Kevin Kennedy, was one of the initiatives that sort of started to get people thinking about intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
So, just in a broad sense, branding touches all of those things, just like zoning touches all of those things, because philosophically, each of them is looking at the community as a whole through a different lens.
So combined,
the airline trail, yes, we're working hard on developing that as an asset, partly because that was a thing that was identified in the branding workshop, which went on for a year, as promoting outdoor recreational activities. Assets is something that was unique in situ in Thompson, right? The trail is where the trail is. It's something that we have. It's something that has a certain amount of draw, and it's something that can be developed. So yes, we're working on that. The Wilsonville go ahead.
To make it simple, if you take a look at how they laid those 11 points I just read off, so you take those 11 points and say, okay, what isn't going to work? What don't we need? And what can we do with these 11 points and relate it to the activity that's going on now between the branding and the new regulations, and come up with a plan. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? And that new, has anybody looked at it? I guess not, right?
In the new.
Well, probably nobody's looked at this old thing in
No.
years. You're talking about the old one, right, Cindy?
Right. I read it the first. That was one of the first things I did when I came into this job, was to read that. Have I looked at it since? Probably not, but I've looked at it since because of this, yes. But did I look at it in between time? Probably not. Maybe once or twice or something. But I took a good look at it and the parts that I'm involved in working with you people on the new PoCD. So
yeah, I think it is definitely worthwhile at looking at, what was set as goals. Did we meet them? Did we not meet them? And are they still relevant?
Right.
Yes, I think that is a point well taken.
Okay.
Tara, just to add to that, I agree. Maybe that's something, especially that trails. I would assume that the trails department was involved with this PoCD and their goals.
Yeah.
To connect that. Is there anything in what you've written already?
Oh yes, the section on trails, the sections on trails and outdoor recreation are very, very, very robust. We had lots of participation there. Similarly, agriculture, conservation, and open space. Although the groups were smaller, it was me, Carolyn, Kais, Judy Rondo, Lynn Landry. Those are topics that got very, very, very close examination, and I have to say I'm pretty happy with how they have developed. And for anybody, oh hi kitten, my kitten's trying to cause trouble. For anybody who has gone through any of the iterations of the draft as they've come out every week, you've got that, and you can certainly look at that at any time. So if what you're saying, though, is that you want to emphasize the connection between infill development or brownfields and those items, trails development, then yes, I would wholeheartedly agree there.
So what you do is you basically formulated them the same way you did the opening for this. Is you took the bullet points out of those particular subjects, the trail committee, whatever else you mentioned just now, and then you related the same way for land development. This is what you see for the future of land development, and this is the part of the groups in our community who are going to work with it to see that it comes through.
Right.
Yes. No?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And, Joe Martino did send some stuff, and he wasn't able to join us today, specific to, for example, looking at the Belding Corticelli site, which I would raise under brownfields.
Right.
I mean, that sore thumb comes up in everybody's mind constantly. So maybe this is a place where we should be articulating what we would like to see. Again, it's not prescriptive, right? It's just guiding. So a developer comes in and says, oh, the town would like to see X kind of use here. Because we've always left all this stuff very open-ended, privately owned, we have no leverage, we can't guide. But in fact, these documents are intended to serve as a nudge. So what is it that we want to say about that or see there? I'm leaving that to you guys here. I'm new here.
So the thing, if I know this redesign study for exit, which was 98, now 48, that's been going on for years and years. I mean, you heard about it when living in Putnam. If that's not going to be a reality, don't put it in. And the same thing with something else I read here. Maybe it was just that. Oh, the information center, the welcome center. If that's not going to be a reality with the state, why put it in? Would be nice. But if you guys still want it to be a reality, then put it in.
Right. Well, and as you point out as well, those are things that we can't initiate. Well, we can initiate a study, but we can't initiate a state welcome center. We are not the state. We can ask.
Exactly. You have to convince a lot of people to do those two things.
Well, on that subject, Cindy and Sarah, is that NECOG had drawings and everything else, and just the state wouldn't come up with the money for that.
Yeah.
That's all been done. So to Cindy's point, I don't know if that has to be as a goal, be somewhat unattainable at this point with the condition of the state, especially with COVID and how much money
Exactly.
they're gonna be in a hole that I can't see that happening in the next 10 years. But the other parts is a goal of the trails, the tri-marker, that other things, Tara, that you're working on, for that a train wreck site. I don't know what you write about that part, to be in the POCD, that in the event that you're gonna need help to get that, at least that would be in our POCD, which is always helpful in grants.
Definitely put the train wreck site in the POCD. Yes.
Oh, yes, absolutely. That puppy is in there in spades.
Okay.
I noticed.
So basically, it would probably be pretty easy. Probably most of your work is done, Terry. You just have to take some of the things that I brought up tonight and the other people brought up, and look at make sure they relate to the zoning regulations. You've related already to what we want to do with the subdivision regulations, and just bullet point it for land use.
I mean, I certainly can do that.
I think this group works better with something crafted to look at and comment on, as opposed to a big blank space underneath a heading.
Okay.
What do you think, Kira? That's the message I'm getting.
Yeah, and I actually had read this section in the old POCD before I even got Tara's part in it. So that was one of my first thoughts after I finished reading Tara's 2.5 pages.
Okay, yeah, and I can certainly do. I mean, tomorrow is the day that I'm going to go back out and sort of pull these threads out and make the larger sort of version 1.2 draft. So I would still say, whatever you guys see here for, holes, what hasn't been addressed, what are your open questions to be asked? What are your pet issues to be at least addressed? Whether I come up in a drafting situation with, exactly how somebody wants to hear something addressed is a separate issue. But what points have we not raised? How do we feel about the way we want to present ourselves going forward in this statement on future land use? Keeping in mind that I'm going to go back through the document and I'm going to, do what I did in that opening section and peel out reference points and say, you know, we established this, this is where we established it because of this, then this. But, you know, all of you guys have lived here longer than I've lived here. All of you guys have seen how things have changed for the better, for the worse, how things have stayed the same. You know, what are the open concerns particular to land use, but I have no problem entertaining other concerns, because sometimes there is a thread that you can pull on that gets to where you're headed. You know, what's missing? What have you not heard yet that you want to hear here?
Kira?
Would it help,
Carolyn.
would it help the members if I wrote all those 11 points up and send it over to you so that you have it in writing?
Yeah, you can do that, Cindy. I mean,
Okay.
I'm going to be drafting this tomorrow, so
I can
yeah,
do
that'd
it
be
after.
great.
I can do it when I hang up here and sit on the computer and while I'm watching TV.
Yeah,
It's
works
all
for
written
me.
down, so. Okay, I
Tara,
can do
I
that.
just wanted to say that I think that there are a lot of very strong points in what you have presented here. And one of them that I would like to see not get lost, especially as the subdivision regulations are revised, is the bottom bullet point that you have about Thompson residents place high value on the rural nature and historic character of the town. I really don't want to see that get lost.
I agree
Yeah.
with you,
Yeah.
Caroline.
Yeah.
And I fear, you know, that's a very strong statement, but sometimes I fear with the new regulations that is going to be, the new regulations are going to hurt that statement.
Well, you know, I think in the rural districts, the limitations of the soils will have some impact on
Okay.
development. So I'm not as worried about that. I think that, you know, what's been earmarked by everyone during all of the conversations with zoning and so forth has been the development of the corridor and the mill rehab district, et cetera. And I think that emphasis on that is appropriate. It's very appropriate, especially if you want to balance conservation and development. So I think as the subdivision regs get revised, I just wouldn't want the rural nature of the town to get lost.
So when you speak of the rural nature of their town, are you just talking about the outline, the new
Well, it would have-
residential, rural, agricultural, or are you
I
putting
think
that together as one community, even the different districts, that the new regulations will see more congestion?
Who are you asking that of, me or Carolyn?
Caroline mainly, but it's just something that,
certainly overall, you know, but what parts of the town will people consider to be rural 10 years from now?
the
What parts of
outline.
the town do people consider to be rural right now?
That's a
You
good
know,
question.
yeah. So, you know, whatever that vision is, we have to keep that in mind as we change the regulations. Understanding
So I'll
that things are going to change. But how much do we want?
So I'll introduce an anecdote here. Well, a couple of different anecdotes. Well, no, just one. So Cindy and I, yeah, well, because there's only one that's truly relevant. So Cindy and I get those get emails forwarded to us through the website for people with various land use concerns.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have all, the land use staff and the land use commissioners, repeatedly said this stuff about, you know, the people of Thompson value this rural character, this, that, the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a complaint not too long ago about having a rooster in in an R40. So we are making assumptions based on the people who have replied to questions we have asked them directly about what they value. And those highly motivated residents do almost universally say that they value that rural character
Mhm.
until it inconveniences them.
Yes.
Until there's a neighbor with a rooster or somebody with a horse and it gets hot in the summer and they can smell the horse manure. Right?
Cows.
So, or cows or whatever,
I should say.
whatever, right? I have had people with straight faces, and I will not identify those people, with straight faces say that they think people should have permits to own dogs, zoning permits to own dogs.
Oh my God.
Said that, yes. So I agree and also personally value the rural character of the town. My reading of the available material and the way land use planning has evolved over time tells me that the best way to preserve rural character in a town while still getting the funding that you need from a tax base to keep it solvent over time is to have areas of concentrated density and areas of sparser density. But you still need to have enough density to make sure that you're solvent. Right? So that's why I say we need to come to an average density of certain, optimal numbers of parcels per road mile, but they don't have to be evenly spread out, right? You don't want sprawl, I don't want sprawl. Sprawl is bad for everybody. But concentrated density allows you to have rural outlying districts, which was, by the way, the absolutely normal way that communities developed until the introduction of zoning. Places would develop around a town or city center that was more dense, where you had more services, and then the farming or, slightly more spread out uses would radiate out from that core. What zoning did was said, well, no, you can only do X in X, and it spread things out so that you had to drive between uses, and you start to get that, everything starts to have that quality of sameness. That was an unintended but direct consequence of the introduction of zoning. Zoning has its values. Zoning keeps so that you can, for example, keep truly incompatible uses apart, mostly industrial uses. But the idea that small neighborhood enterprises can't exist in rural neighborhoods is actually in defiance of what rural communities looked like for most of human history until we made them look a different way. Right? When you grew up in a town that was a farm town, you could walk to a butcher, you could ride your horse to your church. They were denser even then. So now we have to do this hat trick where we're preserving a mental image of a rural community while still trying to hang it on these bones that zoning has left us with. So you guys did a whole bunch of the hard work over the last 2 years, and you have better zoning regulations that are going to allow for targeted density while still allowing people to use and enjoy their properties in the outlying districts. So then the next step, as I've posited here, is how do you further articulate that by saying where people want to develop these subdivisions, because people have a right to monetize their property, how do we control the terms to make sure that in the end, 10 years from now, even with a little more buildup, a little more density, you're still going to recognize the community that you're in. There's my anecdote.
So,
Well, I think in recent years, use of the open space set aside or fee in lieu of has certainly helped to some degree.
You do find that to be useful, Carolyn?
It has been, yes.
You want to repeat that, Carolyn? I'm sorry.
The use within the subdivision regulations, the use of the open space set aside or fee in lieu of open space has been effective in helping to balance the amount of development.
Okay, so you were including open space all I heard you say was fee in lieu. That's why I was surprised.
Oh,
But you do find the conservation subdivision
well, that was
standard to be useful.
I don't know how much that's going to go over, but a traditional subdivision has been requiring either open space set aside or a fee in lieu of that. A conservation subdivision is very attractive as well, as long as it doesn't sprawl all into all of the wildlife corridors.
Well, that's how they're supposed to be designed, right? Is to minimize their impact on those corridors.
It would really depend on the size of the parcel and, you know, what the developer has in mind. Yes. I think, you
Okay.
know,
Go ahead.
soils will be limiting too. So, you know, every situation will be unique.
To the point that Carolyn's just making about the wildlife corridors, I find that if part of that corridor that you see deer, turkeys, etc., in an area, then that disappears by a development, the wildlife finds another area to go to. So the concern about wildlife corridors, i.e. being that last big concern we had at the end of Spicer, saying that you're not going to see the turkeys or the deer. That didn't hold any water because they're still there. So I agree, conservation development, because we have a section on what that entails currently in our regs, you know, to develop that. And that fee of lieu in this space, I think you had mentioned something about there's not enough money in there to do anything with. The last accounting I had of that a year ago was over $80,000. So it's just that if we had a piece of property that we wanted to conserve that adjoins another piece of property, i.e. something like the Wyndham Land Trust has, that if we can add to that, then we haven't spent any of that money other than to survey some properties around town, which I'm not sure if that was the real reason for developing that fee in lieu of space. My put on that was always to buy more conservation land somewhere that ties in with some other land that's in the area.
Yeah, John, we bought 2 small parcels with that.
I'm sorry?
We did
Oh, yeah,
buy 2 small parcels out off of New
East
Road.
Thompson. It wasn't at East Thompson where that well, the town well was.
No,
no.
this was the lands that Rawson gave the town out by the oh gosh, the airline trail. You know where they call it the Hermit Cave? You know where that is?
No.
Oh, I'll have to show you on a map, but
It's on the
Okay.
way up to the tri-state marker off the airline trail, John.
It all connects to the tri-state
I
marker.
would assume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A road that leads nowhere.
Yeah. Okay. My point is that I think, you know, I agree with the conservation of stuff, but when we always saying it disrupts the the pathways of all this wildlife, they seem to adapt to it. As they do on the opposite side of it, we start taking too much of their land away from them where they provide to live, then you see them in your backyard, i.e. you watch on TVs, there's bears in people's backyard, which you never seen a bear before, you know? So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
that's,
well, that is a consequence of shrinking territory, whether you call it a wildlife corridor or just plain old habitat. You are correct. Wildlife is adaptable. Certainly, common wildlife is adaptable. Deer are just big, pretty rats in a lot of ways. Big, beautiful, tasty rats.
I don't know, I wouldn't need a rat, but.
But it also does increase the opportunity for conflict between human use and wildlife when you shrink those corridors. I mean, that's, it's not just so that the deer and the turkeys and the whatever else can migrate from territory to territory. It's that prevents the conflict between human use and the original inhabitants of the place. But yes, they do adapt. They're incredibly adaptive.
And we do
there's
have
foxes in Worcester.
We do have a lot of open space. You take the aquatic, the state park, what is there, 3,000 or 4,000 acres out there? In addition, well, it's all over. Let's get, I'm getting off the subject here. Let's,
By the way, deer are vegetarians, rats aren't.
yeah, how's that,
I mean,
Terry?
if we do want to make a comparison. I have to stick up for the deer.
Yeah, thanks, Carolyn.
Hey,
Right.
I love them. We have a nice little resident herd that comes by and visits. I actually don't have much against rats as long as they're not in my own garbage.
There you go.
So Cindy, back to your suggestion, is that what you're suggesting, that, of course, we always dump it on Tara, but is to look at the last PoCD and see if there's any goals that we didn't meet that we should include in this one?
Yes, under land use, and I just finished typing them all up to send them to email everything to you
Okay,
as you all were
Awesome.
talking. So if you don't get it tonight, that means hoard is horrible, and I'll have to wait till tomorrow when I go in for my meeting to send it to you.
Yeah, no, that'll be helpful to me just to have it where I can pluck it from her email and drop it in and start working around it. Plus the stuff that we've mentioned tonight and the drawing the points out. I mean, we've been at it for an hour and a half. I feel like I've got enough to work with tomorrow, but I don't want to keep anybody from contributing anything that they have further here before closing it off. Anybody?
I just want to make one remark on the suggestion that that they should be getting a zoning permit for dogs. If you have to, if you do that, that's all I'll do all day long.
Yeah.
Guys.
Yeah. Cindy, I didn't say that I took that request seriously. I'm
No,
just
I
pointing
know,
out
I
that.
know.
Yeah,
I'm just had to
pointing
put
out
that.
that people in general really only want and value what they individually want and value.
Yeah.
Right. So here we are in rural town. I got people complaining about roosters. Here we are in rural town. I got people complaining about that people are allowed to have dogs. And these are not imaginary. These are conversations that I've had. And it's not to say that there's those people's priorities are good, bad, or anything. They're their priorities. I'm just saying that, we might not be as homogenous as we think that we are in terms of the way people value their community. I would go so far as to say a majority of the people who live in any town, not just Thompson, any town, don't give a second thought to what their land use regulations are, to who their elected officials are, their local elected officials are,
That's
to
true.
who the volunteer board and commissioner, hey, look, you could have put me in that boat 5 years ago when I moved to Thompson. I didn't know the first selectman's name. I didn't know how, you know, who was on these commissions. I didn't know the work that was going on in the background. I went to my job, I came back, I slept here, I ate here, I went and visited my friends who don't live here, right? It is a matter of will and intent to take the time to know how these things work together and try to make them work in a way that is favorable for the other people in the community. Most people are never going to do that. Most people probably who live in this town don't actually care about whether it's rural or historic or whether there's businesses downtown. They're going to do that. They're going to wake up in the morning, they're going to go to their jobs, they're going to come back in the end of the day, and they're going to watch TV, and that's as far as they're going to think. But our responsibility is higher, right? So, you know, the
I
people
think that
who have
falls.
taken the time.
What'd you say, John?
I said, Tara, I think you summarized that the people, it's just falls in the category of not in my backyard. As long as it's not in their backyard,
Yep,
then they're
NIMBY.
good with, they're good with it. And for all the work that you've done, Tara, it just, from what you're saying, you didn't know who the selectman was, just that you come a long way, baby, as they say.
Yep.
Well, the point is not that I'm this, that, or the other thing. The point is that it is an active intent, right? So we are here and we're behaving intentionally. And as such, you know, we're going to do the best we can with the information that we have. And we have identified a certain number of priorities. We are able to look at a body of widely available literature on what has been shown to work, what doesn't work, and we can make intelligent choices about it, you know, that we can use to guide ourselves for the next 10 years, so that this POCD will not be a document that is essentially a paperweight that goes on a shelf. And when people raise arguments about whether something is or is not consistent with the POCD, you can confidently say, as planning and zoning commissioners, well, actually, yes, we had quite a bit of input in that, and we believe it is consistent, and we can say it's consistent for these reasons. So it improves your own toolbox to have the good document, and that's what I will try to finish producing for you with all of your help. So that's where we are.
Okay.
So just for the people who are here, I'm going to send out a complete draft tomorrow with everything that I've been able to incorporate. It's going to be almost everything. There's still some highlighted sections. I need stuff back on education and library from Board of Ed and/or Melinda and Allison, respectively. And then the meeting to vote to approve, which I'm just going to say flat out, whatever concerns we have, they've got to be addressed before we get into that meeting. That meeting, this document needs to be approved. So if anybody's got any reservations, keep sending them to me. I'll address them as best I can. But by the time we go in on the 28th, this has got to be adopted in a form that everyone's comfortable with. For the next 2.5 weeks, I'm going to call weekly meetings to try to set the 10-year matrix. In other words, all of the little it is recommended that's and bullet points into one spreadsheet that's got some sort of short-term, mid-term, long-term steps for each of the topics. And I'll just keep sending out that a weekly update with, you know, where we are and who I'd like to come in on those meetings. So good work, everybody.
Tara, are you
Yeah.
Tara, are you extending the that complete package once you finish it to all the commission members? That being, I think the last I started reading was 120 pages or so.
It's going to be about 150 by the end of the day tomorrow. Yes, I will email the whole document.
How about for my, well, I'll have Cindy print it out because I'm not printing 150 pages on my.
If you want, I'll print you a copy and have it for you in the office, John. That's fine.
If I'm the only one that wants it, because you know, I just like that.
I just have one question on the 150 pages. Do you have any
Yeah.
idea how that relates to other POCDs around, a community our size or around the
I
state?
have a general sense, yeah, and I've had some good examples sent to me by people who have worked on POCDs before. Guskowski and Judy Rondo. Santos pulled one. The one Santos pulled was shorter, probably clocked in around 60-ish pages. What I have learned is that 10 years ago, that document that we have was probably pretty much on trend. They were shorter, they were less involved. The ones that were sent to me as good examples all clocked in, except for the one that Santos sent me at over 100 pages. I'm trying to remember the towns they were. Stonington was one. Hampton might have been another. Hampton or Hamden, I can't remember. So, I didn't get Bridgeport's. I didn't get New Haven's.
Well, yeah, those are big
I've looked at
cities.
I've looked at West Hartford's for a specific purpose, but yeah, they've been small Connecticut towns within a range that would be comparable to what we're looking at.
Relating back to the, dislocation of your community members to their actual municipal functions. I just wonder if 150 pages is just a lot, and just wondering how it can be scaled down. That's all.
I don't expect anybody to sit down and read it like a novel, unless it's me.
Other than me.
But if you're looking, and me and John, but if you're looking for topics, it'll be laid out so that you can pick and choose your topics.
Okay.
And, maybe it'll be interesting to you to read more. Maybe it won't. Maybe all you want to do is look at the table of the planned action items at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Just like anything else, you read what's of use to you. But what we're going to provide, at least I hope, is going to be genuinely useful to people who, need to look at it. Commissioners, board members, select people, developers, whatever. Whoever's out there who needs to know.
Okay. All right.
Anybody else? Who's got what? Anything? Because I'm happy to wrap this, guys.
Good
Oh,
night,
no.
John boy.
Good night then, John Boy. Or both John Boys.
You're too young to know that TV program.
I most certainly am not too young to know that TV program.
Okay.
I'm an old lady,
Yay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you're an old lady, all right.